So Tom BOWER's book has dropped, and weirdly there has been a little bit of silence. I'm noticing that things have been very, very quiet. We've had the usual type of deflection, but nothing really has exploded. But I'm going to be talking about this and yeah, let me know what you guys think. So I'm going to be getting into some of this, and the more explosive stuff I feel is probably going to be coming next week, the calm before the storm. And so if you are interested in doing a bit of a psychological dive into, well, at the moment it is Harry and Meghan, but I will be covering other things on this channel, then this could be for you. So if you've enjoyed the video, please give it a like. If you have a spare hype going around, then that would be amazing too. Subscribe to the channel so you do not miss a future upload. You know, the usual blah, blah, blah spiel. So let's get into why you are all here. Go grab your drink of choice, whatever that is. Sit back, relax as we get into some tea with some truth and a touch of therapeutic psychology. Before I get going, I just want to add, I have been sitting here and sitting here and sitting here waiting for this book to come in. The audio, which was supposed to come today, will drop today into my audio, is not coming till tomorrow, and the book hasn't arrived yet. So I am very frustrated. So I will be doing an extra video. I'm going to record one on Saturday because the book is actually coming tomorrow. So when the book comes, I will be doing a video on that. And I probably think that next week I'm going to be covering this for most of the week to see what's being said. Because even though I know that a lot of people are going to be covering this, you know me, I like to read between the lines, and I like to find things that maybe some people will miss. Obviously doing a bit of a psychological dive into what's going on. So for today, I'm going to explore what has really been said so far. And I'm going to sort of explore that a little bit more to give you my thoughts and my opinions in what I feel is potentially going on here as well. So I think, first of all, I know most of you know, but it's important for the channel to just discuss a little bit about who Tom BOWER is, because I think when we look at the credibility of who Tom is, that then gives more credence to what has come out from him. So Tom BOWER isn't just a commentator, even though I know that we have seen him on various interviews, but he is the author who wrote this particular book. And he has done various books on the royal family. He's even done another one on Harry and Meghan, which was Revenge. And these are about very powerful people, which, you know, from the outside, you'd sort of think, well, that's a bit of a risk. He's talked about Boris Johnson, Mohammed Al-Fayed, and even Robert Maxwell, who we know is Ghislaine Maxwell's father. So he has done some very controversial people, which if there was any sort of fear of what I'm saying is not correct, I could get sued, then yeah, they're people that you probably wouldn't want to mess with, really, in all fairness. And so of course he's done this with Harry and Meghan as well, as we know, but this isn't new territory for him. And I think the one thing that we can say is that his books are heavily lawyered. So given his background as well, it is very, very safe to say that he has gone through everything, probably not even just himself, but maybe even friends of his in the legal system that have gone through this with a fine tooth comb and said, right, okay, you're writing this, 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 and this. What have you got to back that up? And this is why I believe that Harry and Meghan just do the just shouting about it, like putting out a piece going, you know, he is just the most, he's such a liar, and he's just, you know, it's just full of conspiracy theories. But actually, given how litigious Harry and Meghan are and have been, it is very interesting that they have not sued him. And in fact, it's that I can see that nobody has successfully sued Tom BOWER. So the fact that he knows all of this, he is also not someone that is stupid. So he is going to be somebody that is going to know that how litigious Harry and Meghan are. So he is going to make sure that everything is airtight. I do probably imagine that there are some things that he probably could prove And I do wonder if a certain two children are part of that, but perhaps he has refrained from talking about it. I mean, I hope that he does mention, but he kind of does allude to it to some degree, because he does call them Harry's children. Now, I have my thoughts on this, as you know, but that is interesting. It's not Harry and Meghan's children, it's Harry's children. So this is the man that has written this book. And I think that we can literally, like I say, we can absolutely categorically state that if there was anything in that book that Harry and Meghan could home in on to sue him for, because once you sue over one thing, it could then sort of bring everything else into question. So they're like, yeah, that's categorically a lie and we can prove that. Then it's, people would then start thinking, well, if that's a lie, then maybe there's other things, but there's been nothing so far. I mean, we'll see. Okay, so what's been coming out? At the moment, we've seen brainwashed. We've seen take your finger out of my face. We have seen threat rather than ally, Meghan Games and disaster tourists. And I just want to say from the offset that when you're reading some of these things, it does lean into that I have noticed that this is all Meghan's fault. And as most of you also know, I do not believe that Meghan is solely to blame for what has come out since she met Harry. I'm going to get into that. So this is what we've seen so far. There's some little bits that I'm going to talk about in a little bit of part two. So stick around to the end. So let's look at brainwash. So apparently Meghan allegedly brainwashed Harry. And I think that this come out from, was it Camilla that was speaking to a friend? And I imagine maybe that friend has spoken to Tom BOWER, or it's come out some other way. But again, I think that is I don't know, almost like a vague statement, but I think that does go to the belief that we have of Meghan being a narcissist, and how narcissists can, I suppose it feels like they brainwash you. And to some degree that is true. So I can sort of get why people like Camilla and maybe other members of the royal family are looking at this situation and think that the Harry was brainwashed by her. But I think that if we're going to read between the lines of that, the facts are that Harry is a very damaged person. I think Harry has a lot of issues prior to Meghan. These have definitely come out with his the things that substances that he admitted to taking. And I think that he has got a lot of issues in regards to his mum, and they're not healthy. And I think that she capitalized on that. And she met him at a time when she was able to do what narcissists do and love bomb and manipulate. And we know all of that. But I think that that's probably what Camilla was referring to, because I would imagine that they probably don't have, it's not they don't understand narcissism, but they probably never come across someone like Meghan before. So it was easy to think that Harry, given that Harry's their family, that they're going to see Meghan as the one that brainwashed him. And do I think that she took advantage of a situation? Absolutely. But do I think Harry's innocent? No, I don't. I just think that he was in a situation at a time and she was able to find an opening to get her claws in, if you like. Then the take your finger out of my face. Now, this was apparently an argument that was happening, and apparently Prince William put his finger in Meghan's face, and she didn't like that too much. Now, again, if I was going to look at it from a neutral perspective, if someone was putting a finger in my face, I wouldn't like that. But however, I don't want to be neutral because it's Meghan. And I imagine probably for William, whatever was kind of going on, there's probably this very built up frustration and tension between what's going on within the family. And, he probably does blame Meghan for a lot of things, even though I think Harry, like I say, is just as responsible for certain aspects of what went on. He probably, given that Harry's his brother, probably did get to a point where they're having this sort of heated debate and he's just like wagging his finger in her face. And I think that's quite funny. But, okay, that's probably the only thing where I can kind of go, look, well, if that was me, I mean, not that I would ever do anything that she does, but if someone was wagging their finger in my face, I would not be happy about that either. But given also what we now know, I can equally understand the frustration that William must have felt in that moment, and probably was just like, you're this, you're that. So yeah, I can kind of see, yeah. I mean, I just don't want to give, I don't want to give Meghan anything. I just don't. But at the same time, it's like I try to be as fair as I possibly can to some degree. If I see something and think, well, you know, would I be okay with that? And no, I wouldn't. But then like I say, I wouldn't ever probably get myself into that type of situation where someone's doing that. And if they did, it certainly wouldn't be because of something I've done that's so horrendous. So then that would mean that they're almost trying to put me down. And I can imagine them from someone like Meghan, who is not used to having probably that level of pushback, that when she gets a man who she can't manipulate, because let's be honest, I think that was definitely the rule of thumb for her, was like, you know, I've got in and now I want to, you know, manipulate and see if I can win William over. And when that probably wasn't happening, she did not like that in any way, shape or form. So I think that probably was all leading to then, okay, I'm not winning these people over. Everything I'm trying is not working. And I don't know how to deal with that. So then comes into the threat rather than being an ally. And this, I think, was William and Catherine believing that Meghan was becoming a threat. And I think, like everyone, when she first came into the royal family, before we really knew who she was, most of us saw that. You know, when they sat down, and I will say that my spidey senses were going off when they were on the interview, the engagement interview. But I think most people saw that she was going to potentially be an ally for Harry. And it was like, you know, finally Harry's found someone. He's very much in love, and, you know, and she's a team player. She wants to be part of the royal family, the great, you know, the Fab Four that they were being named as. And I think that everyone, probably even the royal family, thought initially that this was fantastic, because you've got to think that Meghan, when she first came in, probably would have been on the charm offensive, the love bombing the whole family. That's what they do to get everybody on side. Yeah, so I think that they probably did think that. But then what they probably saw, where Harry maybe seems to be quite blind to what she was doing. Because the other thing with narcissists as well is if they do something to somebody, they tend to do it where there's not really witnesses, or they'll do it in such a way where they can kind of go, I can't believe that you thought that that's what I did. That's so not true. It's like plausible deniability, which I've talked about before, which is why, you know, another thing that I think that she does with the kids is when she puts them on her Instagram, you'll never see her name in the write-up, oh, this is Archie or this is Lily. The media do, she doesn't, and I think that's intentional. So I think that, so what she would be doing is, like, if she was talking to Catherine, she would say something a bit snippy to Catherine. So then when Catherine then went to William and said, you know what, she was incredibly rude to me, Meghan then would be going to Harry going, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. You know, I had a conversation with Catherine and she was so rude to me. But because there's no witnesses, it's her word. And most people would know Catherine and know what she's like, so know that if she did say something like that, she'd be telling the truth. But then you've got Harry, who's there in a situation where he's got to defend his wife, and she's saying that Catherine's done something, which is why I think the whole she made me cry thing come about, was because she did what she did, but she did it to Catherine in a way there was no witnesses. So of course then Catherine comes back upset. Everyone's rallying around and kind of going, oh my God, what's happened? And she says, oh, well, Meghan said this or did this. And then Meghan's going to Harry, you know, pretend almost like, you know, left eye, one tear, go. And Harry, of course, is in a situation then where, of like, I know my sister-in-law, but I've got my wife telling me this, or my girlfriend telling me this, and I want to stay with her. And so he then is almost forced into this corner of defending her. So then that then starts to put tension between him and his brother. His brother's like, I can't believe you're defending Meghan over Catherine. You know Catherine. And it's like, you know, you can see this playing out, which is why then that heated argument that apparently happened. I do believe that it was Harry that was volatile and instigated a lot of that. You know, you probably find that William pushed back, because I do think that William's quite a strong man in that way, and he's probably not going to handle Harry being up in his face, you know, having a go at him about something. And so I can absolutely believe then that possibly he fell back. Because like I say, whenever they talk about something, there's always a grain of truth, even if it means that they've flipped the storyline and they to create them to be the victim. Over a period of time, Catherine and William and other members of the royal family were starting to see these little things happening where Meghan was kind of doing and saying things, but then running back to Harry and going, oh my gosh, your family are so against me. They just hate me. And the tension grows. And in amongst that, you've got Meghan in the middle, like stirring the pot, you know, probably grinning, going, my plan is working. And that's what I think was happening potentially there. You know, we've seen this in family dynamics. If you even sit back and ask yourself how many times you've potentially seen something like this in your family, your friends, there's sometimes often one person that does a lot of the stirring the pot. Like, we'll go to one person and be like, oh, you know, they said this about you. And then when they're confronted, they're like, I never said that. You know, I think you're just, you know, you misheard what I'd said. And they do that a lot. And I think that this is exactly what went on then. So, of course, then we come to the Meghan games, which most of us know, which was about the fact that this is when they were obviously not happy about the fact that there was a lot of this being circulated of the Meghan taking over the games. If you remember when Meghan was in Canada with the last, was it the Whistler games, you know, she was getting a lot of pushback and a lot of backlash for moving the people in wheelchairs. The way that she sort of was looking at certain things, it was like she was, you know, coming across almost like really awkward, like she didn't want to be around the sort of people with disabilities. And then the next thing we know, suddenly she's flying back to California to allegedly be with the children. And again, you know, if these were two parents that had real children living with them, you would think that given how much they go away, and they go away for long lengths of time, that they would be taking these kids with them. Because most, even the royal family, unless they absolutely cannot take the children for schooling or whatever, they are always around the children. They very rarely are away from the children. And if they are, then it's usually one or the other. So they're not both away. But Harry and Meghan seem to go away. They almost act like a single couple, if you know what I mean, like a couple with no kids. But then suddenly she's then back in California, and Harry stayed in Canada. And what is the first thing she does? Is she starts putting things on her Instagram, knowing instinctively that the media attention will come back to her. And she utilizes the kids, like, you know, bought these little sweet treats back from Canada for the kids, you know. And it's not that there's pictures of the kids eating them, because we know that that's not, because you need real kids to be doing that. But this is what I think that she does. And so this then shows you that she is not somebody that is a team player, and not even with Harry. So when it comes to, and possibly because this was being exposed now as like, you know, why is Meghan taking over this? It's becoming more about Harry and Meghan. It is possible that Invictus were like, come on, you know, there's all the media here is now about her. And so then in a way she was forced to leave Canada, because I don't believe by choice she would have done that. And so, of course, because she's annoyed and angry, the fact that she's been asked to be removed from Canada of the Invictus Games, the first thing she then does is starts then putting out stuff on her Instagram to draw attention away from what Harry's doing. Nobody would do that. She would have just come back and stayed quiet. She didn't. And so that's what, again, you know, the Meghan Games thing definitely feeds into that aspect of things. And then we have the disaster tourist, which again, we all know the fact that she has turned up. You remember that horrendous one where she turned up at Uvalde, you know, and obviously the LA fires. And again, this is what they do. And this is why people are just so against them, because they do things like this, which just show that they only are interested in the cameras being there. You know, there were plenty of people that turned up and the media wasn't called. It's just people with their phones that have gone, oh my gosh, like Jennifer Garner's here, oh my gosh, or who was the other one? That guy actor, Matthew McConaughey, you know, he turned up and did some things, and, you know, and other celebrities do things and they get shown because someone's taken a photograph of them on a cell phone. It's not the perhaps backgrid has been called, but that is what it is with Harry and Meghan. And so that when you see that, then it starts to show people that actually you're utilising these terrible, terrible tragedies where people have lost their lives, people are vulnerable, people have lost their homes, their personal possessions, things that, you know, beloved pets or whatever, and you're turning up making this a PR stunt because you just want to look like you're humanitarian. And so this then becomes... then when you push this into this sort of box of all of these things, they're very heavily led in the way that Meghan is. And I do think that when the other things that are coming out that I'm starting to see trickle, it is the fact that Meghan seems to be this very dominant person and very submissive beta male. And again, this is very indicative of a narcissistic relationship. Now, I do think Harry's very reactive, but I think in a way it's more that she's all he's got. And so just before I get into the second part, I'm just going to also add in the Diana angle as well, because I think that this is something that I possibly will maybe be talked about in this book, but definitely heavily in it. And I think there's a lot of transference here. And I think that sometimes that does also explain the way Harry at times views Meghan, in that transference of Meghan pretending to be like Diana incarnate. It's, you know, it's the way that she has utilized the, you know, the rumors of her wearing her perfume. And even though there's, I haven't seen any categorical, like factual evidence that happened, but is that in line with the sort of thing that she do? 100%. And the fact that, you know, we've seen she talks to her, apparently she went to her gravesite, and you know, it's all of these things which I think is possibly sending this very confused messaging to someone like Harry, who then is transferring. So when you look at Harry then fighting for security, fighting for like what he was doing in the beginning, fighting for Meghan, if you've got Meghan who is in a sense really pushed upon the fact that I'm so like your mum, and I feel her coming through in a way, if Harry has in his mind at all that he was too young to fight for her then, but he can fight for her now, then there's going to be an element of that going on. Now, I'm not saying that he's innocent, because I think he definitely does utilize his mum for the victim narrative. And again, that's something that he's leaned into, which is incredibly wrong. And probably another reason why William is so done with him is the way that he has utilized Diana for the victim narrative and getting almost like using it as a get out of jail free card for his behavior. But I can sort of also then see this transference going on with him as well, and Meghan absolutely utilising that. So you've got all of these things. And so just before I get into part two, it's just a little reminder too, if you please check your subscriptions, because YouTube is unsubscribing people, don't know why, just does what it does. So can you please check your subscriptions just to make sure that you are still subscribed. I have read, you know, people are getting confused with the subscription to the membership, or thinking that being a subscriber you have to pay. You don't. So clicking on that subscribe button is absolutely free. You are not tied into anything. You can unsubscribe at any point. The memberships obviously are paid for if you want to join up as them, but if you want to be a subscriber, which again would help me get to my 100k plaque, which would be really amazing, then that is absolutely free. So if you want to help and you are struggling financially, or you just don't want to put any money into anything, because at the end of the day, I understand that you're looking after you, then just do that. Subscribe, because it doesn't cost you a single penny, but it does help me to keep going. It helps me become a bigger channel, and to show YouTube that I'm a channel worth keeping. Liking the videos, hyping the videos, again, all cost you nothing. Viewing the video, first 24 hours matter. I've mentioned this before. So if you can, even if you're running me in the background because you're busy, or using me as a podcast, that would be amazing. But all of these things matter. There are optional things that you can do. You can write to me. I've got a PO box. Write to me via email. You can go onto my Amazon wish list. I have a ShopMy account, so you can go on there and see the things that I use. All of the other platforms I'm on, you can come across and join them and help boost me over there, so I can keep going, keep sharing the truth to you guys. But even if it's just that you enjoy listening to me, it just keeps me on the platform and helps me grow. But aside from that, like I say, if all you can do is subscribe, that means so much to me. If all you can do is like a video, that means so much to me, and hyping as well. But all of the extra bits that you might want, treating me to a coffee, all of the proceeds that I get from the memberships, from the channel, from everywhere else, go to keep my free therapy program running, which is where I give therapy to people for free that struggle financially. This is my mission, my passion project, and I need your help to keep that going. So yeah, so thank you for listening, and I really do appreciate everything that you are doing here and supporting me. And yeah, now back to part two. As I've sort of said in the first part, it's easy to focus on just a dramatic heading or a dramatic quote, but I think it's incredibly important to read between that. That's where we get that level of understanding and level of, you know, like I've said before, like utilizing what happens in the celebrity world, the royal world, ex-royals, and looking at how that might help us if something is kind of going on that's very similar to our own family. So the patterns that people are not really talking about, because I suppose those other ones are a lot bigger, is the fact that I think that people, their dislike for Meghan overrides holding Harry accountable. When Harry does something himself, I think it's easy for people to come out and go, like when he's done various interviews and you see the comments underneath and it's all Harry, you know, and he's done this and he's done that and he should be quiet because he's just ridiculous in what he's talking about. And I think a lot of people will jump on that, and that's understandable. But when it comes to something they do together, it does very much become Meghan. And I understand it. And the outrage that people feel in regards to Meghan, I think it's interesting, because I do feel that some people feel that Meghan took Harry away. And when I do talk to people, because I've got a podcast that I'm starting up, and so also just to quickly add, if you're interested in joining the podcast, which is going to be going over on Patreon, mainly because of the censorship here. So if you want to come and have a discussion with me, and it's not on camera, it'll be like a podcast, it'll be like a blank screen, so you can run it as a podcast, but it's going to be talking about subjects that I feel that on here, you just can't. It's too censored, and I'm getting that a lot more and more here. So I've now opened Patreon, and the link will be in the description box below. So the first podcast is possibly coming next week. So I'm inviting any of you to, if you want to sign up to this, then please come across and email me if you want to join up. And yeah, so that way then I can talk about things over there that I cannot talk about here. So if you are wanting a bit more of the juicy gossip, a bit more of the in-depth, you know, let's really get to the nitty-gritty of what is kind of going on, and you want to come and have your say with me and others, and your outrage or whatever that is, there's going to be different subjects, but we're going to start off with Harry and Meghan, then come and join me over on Patreon. Like I say, the link is below. I've just set it up, so there's nothing over there at the moment, but the first podcast will be dropping. So yeah, and I think, but definitely the rule of thumb I see is that most people sort of lean into this, you know, Meghan is the sort of main protagonist, and I completely understand why, and the fact that Meghan has taken Harry away. But as I have said before, by doing that, putting responsibility where it is meant to lie, absolutely. But I think when we stop holding Harry accountable, that is not okay, and that, as much as I don't like to give Meghan anything, it isn't fair when Harry is just as much to blame to a certain degree. Yes, I know there is narcissistic abuse, but Harry has done things and made conscious decisions to do things that have hurt people. And that, whether you are in the throes of a relationship with a narcissist, that is something that even if you at the time felt that it was right, when it comes out at certain points, it's holding that light up to that and kind of going, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done that. And Harry doesn't seem to learn. It's like he'll do an interview and then knows that he's going to get this pushback and he's going to probably hurt his family. And instead of kind of thinking, yeah, you know what, actually, I really shouldn't have done that, like you think he might have learned after the Oprah interview, instead, he just kind of goes, yeah, no, I'm going to do it again and again and again. And you know, so I think that when people like say, oh, you know, it's all Meghan, yeah, there is a huge, massive part of this that is her in the way that she came into the royal family and did what she did. But he's also a liar. He's also somebody that has shown prior to Meghan that he's misogynistic, that he's very entitled and almost takes his because I'm a prince, I can do and say whatever I want. And I think that is also coming out within his court case. I really do believe he thought that no one was going to challenge him. You know, with it coming out now that the signature's been forged, and the fact that the signature that was forged looks very similar to Harry's handwriting, and I'll put the picture up here. So it could potentially be that someone, whether it's someone that writes for Harry even, because maybe he doesn't sign everything himself, but he's got someone that writes for him, has got the same handwriting, or it's Harry himself. I don't know. But the fact is it's coming out that this was forged, and this is not looking good for Harry. And I do genuinely feel that he thought that he was going to turn up there. And I think this is probably why the people like Elton John got him on board, because it's like, they won't challenge you. You know, you're a prince. They're going to be too scared to. And that's not what's happened. And now we're seeing all of this coming out, and Harry is the one to blame. Not Meghan in this, Harry. And yeah, but I think, and he knows that, because that's why he then brought her in sobbing, because he knows that their cult fanatics are going to jump all over that and being like, oh, all he was doing was trying to protect his wife, you know, and actually he utilizes that. And then you know, and alongside the fact that also people not holding him responsible for cutting people off, you know, it is a very real thing when narcissists create isolation. However, Harry, we know what's been spoken about in Tom Bower's book is Harry changing his number, cutting people off. And that again is a choice that he has made. The fact that he has seen everyone else as the problem, but not the person he's known for 5 minutes. It's like these friends that he's had for years, he's cut off. Family, cut off. And yet the woman that he's, like I say, he knew for like 5 minutes, it's like, oh yeah, she's absolutely trustworthy. And that is something that I think that people haven't really spoken about, how this has, it's not just about his family, the outer circle in a sense that Harry has cut away from his life. And then not only that, to move to a country where he doesn't know anybody apart from Meghan and her mother. So he's only got those two. And I think the other thing as well is that, you know, which has been spoken about, is that Meghan, I generally do feel, came in with this attitude of how this was going to go. And it didn't go that way. And so she then set about causing destruction. But you've also then got the fact that Harry, like I said, is very reactive, acts like a spoiled child when he doesn't get his own way. And so that combined, and I think what we've got now is these two have come together in this shared, almost like view of the world and view of the families. You know, like Meghan's estranged from her family, Harry's estranged from his family. It doesn't matter to them that they've caused this, but they're going to come together, which was the one thing that I did suspect. I thought if she doesn't divorce him and this carries on, that they're actually going to align together. And I've spoken about this in various videos, the fact that these two have now come together in almost like an arrangement. I imagine that he probably does his thing, she does hers, and they just come together to do what they need to do to create the illusion that the marriage is still going strong. But I think what you're finding and seeing is that Meghan, being the, you know, terrible actress that she is, but in that thing, is that she's able to just switch it on and be like, you know, everything's amazing, and Harry isn't. And you're seeing it in his face. He's trying less and less. He's looking really frustrated, really fed up, really down. You know, and the only time we ever see him really laughing or smiling is when he's not with her. So I think that that level of control that she sort of has, and the way that he is within himself as his personality, it's starting to really, really take hold. And I think that that is what we're seeing now. You know, when you've got numerous articles, which we're seeing a lot more coming out now. I think there is definitely, I'm noticing a change in how a lot of the media are starting. There's still a lot of the puff piece, but I am seeing a lot more pushback now. A lot more people are coming out and saying, like, especially with Netflix coming out and saying what they've said, there is now a lot more people, I think, that are kind of going, well, if Netflix have done that and Spotify have done that, you know, and then when we have it, add it all up, it's like, come on, at some point, how are you not recognizing that these two are the problem? You know, it's not everyone else is wrong. It's that these two are the problem. You know, when you've had multiple reports of bullying on both sides, you know, on over here in the UK, over there in America, you have got, you know, businesses that are just not interested, the way that they've been, like the Kardashians doing what they did and saying what they said. And it's like, and everyone else around that's kind of, they're all saying the same thing. And the fact that you've got the cult squad is still, no matter what they do, will put a spin on it and create them to be the, you know, the victims. And yet when you've got William and Catherine, not, whereas any person, aside from anyone connected to Harry and Meghan, any person come out and said, yeah, Catherine's not a very nice person. No one. No one that's ever worked with William or Catherine has ever come out and said, you know, they might say that William can be a bit hot-headed, but that's not a character flaw. That just is someone that's just a bit hot-headed. We can all be like that. But they're not mean, and they're not cruel, and they're not nasty, and they're not vindictive and spiteful. But Harry and Meghan, constant reports of those two bullying and being not very nice people. And I think on the surface, they can be charming when they want something, and then, you know, for their brand, for when it serves them. But outside of that, not so much. And I think that is now what we're seeing. And that's the consistency. Not anything they do or don't do. The consistency is that every time they get involved with somebody and that partnership comes to an end, that partnership, that person or company says they were very difficult, it was very challenging. And then there's a clapback from Harry and Meghan going, well, actually, that's not strictly true. You know, Tom BOWER, this is what they are. Harry and Meghan clap back. Well, that's all conspiracy theory and not true. But again, are these people sued? Was Spotify sued? Was Netflix sued? Has Tom BOWER been sued? Lady C, has she been sued? No. They sue what is safe, where they think that Harry can utilise him being a prince to do it. Everything else outside of that, they just moan and complain. And that is what we're seeing. And like I said, we know that there are people, even in our own life, that has behaved this way. And so when you see that, it stands to reason that the more this plays out, you know, like the clapping back with the Australian petition, again, not really learning that this can draw traffic to something that maybe some people haven't even heard of. Like with the Tom BOWER book, putting him at #1 because they clapped back. And yeah, so I'm going to be looking into this. Like I say, the audio drops tomorrow. I'm so sorry. I know this is what you're expecting, but I'm hoping this video has given you something to listen to. And the audio, like I say, the audio is coming tomorrow. So I'm going to be, going to go scouring that when that comes out. And I will be doing a video on the first chapter or first couple of chapters, depending on what's been written. And then next week, I'm going to be doing some videos on that. And yeah, so let me know your thoughts. You know, what are, you know, do you feel that that it's more Meghan, more Harry, or they're equally to blame? What are your thoughts? You know, and I'd be very interested to read that. Thank you so much for the wonderful comments and wishing me well, because I wasn't very well on the last video. Still not 100%, but I'm getting better. And yeah, so have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you for the next video, which will be Saturday, a little extra one for you, because I feel bad for letting you down for this one. And I hope that you enjoy it. And like I say, don't forget to subscribe, like, and hype if you've got a spare one available. I'd be very, very grateful. And join me on the other platforms. Like I say, help me keep going. And you know, as always, that I love you, I appreciate you, but most of all, I respect you. Take care. Bye-bye. Mwah.